Okay, this is Biotechnology Exposed, Part 9. As you can see here, study links medical costs and personal bankruptcy. Okay, Harvard researchers say 62% of all personal bankruptcies in the United States were caused by health problems, and 78% of those filers had insurance. Part of the reason for that is the cost of these biologics. Now, a lot of it is caused by lengthy hospital stays, but it's also caused by taking medication that can cost $20,000 to upwards to and over $200,000 a year. So that's the story on personal bankruptcies. More caused by health problems and taking exorbitantly priced medications than anything else. So as I talked about in Part 8, with the advent of Dolly the cloned sheep, which made the Roslin Institute, now the famous Roslin Institute worldwide, that the secrecy of this transgenic chicken protein therapeutics in the egg whites would no longer be as secretive as they would want it to be. So they had to, and they really didn't move it out. It never really left Roslin, but a company was started called Avigenics, which just happened to coincide with the unveiling of Dolly the sheep in 1996. Avigenics was started by two men, George Murphy and Robert Ivarie, and they started a company called Avigenics. Now, let me talk a little bit about the experience of Dr. Ivarie. Now, Dr. Ivarie started Avigenics in 1996 with very little experience. He was a geneticist, but he didn't have really any papers published at all on avian transgenic, chicken transgenics. And that's quite a leap of faith to start a new company to make transgenic chickens when there is no history of you having worked on anything of that sort. And let me show you a couple things. Okay, this is an article about Professor Ivarie. Professor hatches his biotech firm to spawn life-saving chicken eggs. Building a better chicken. Avigenics was formed in 1996 by Dr. Bob Ivarie. Now, if you search Google Scholar, and if you can see that, I searched, come on, focus. Okay, if you search Google Scholar, transgenic chickens, Robert Ivarie, from the years 90 to 96. You find him mentioned in only, the search resulted in only two things, neither of which he was the author of the publication. You got a mention on this first one, and the second one he's probably mentioned a lot further in. So he basically had no publications on transgenic chickens from 90 to 96, and he started a company off that. It's quite a leap of. Okay, you perform the same search on transgenic chickens for Helen Sang from 90 to 96. You find 11 different publications where she is either mentioned or has authored. Now, if you see the first one, transgenic birds DNA microinjection, She was the author of that article. You look at the second one. Transgenic chickens, method and potential application, Helen Sang. Third one. Transgenesis in chickens, Helen Sang. Another one. Expression of exogenous DNA during the early development of chicken embryo, Helen Sang. So Helen Sang had many published papers on transgenic chickens. Here you can see transgenic birds by DNA microinjection, one of the ones I showed you there, from 1994, and highlighted Helen Sang was part of the authors of that. And you can go down to the references, and there's no mention of Robert Ivarie at all. In fact, we have Bosselman, who was part of the original patent with the Amgen team for transgenic chickens from back in 92, and a couple of more mentions of Helen Sang as references. No references in 94 to Robert Ivarie. This one even goes back further, as you can see here, if you see the date. It's from October 1992, Transgenesis in Chickens. Helen Sang was the author of that. It's from September of 1992. And if you scan down, we also have another Bosselman reference. All of these things go back to Bosselman because they were the original patent for transgenic chickens. And Bosselman et al. They worked for Amgen. This is from 2007, and I'm just going to use this so you can scan down here. Designer: hens lay anti-cancer eggs. Dr. Helen Sang at the Roslin Institute, and if you read that, lead scientist on the project has been working on for 15 years. So this was from 2007. She's been at least working since the early 90s on this. And here's a little article in Nature from 2001 where it mentions Roslin Institute researcher Helen Sang. Sang, an expert in gene transfer in chickens. Now that's something that I cannot find attached to Dr. Robert Ivarie's name, that he is any sort of expert in chicken transgenics. Every time I see that they're commenting on who's the expert, it's Dr. Helen Sang of the Roslin Institute. So the industry taps Dr. Robert Ivarie to start a new company called Avigenics to create the transgenic chickens that would lay the eggs with the protein in the egg whites. As I showed you, he didn't have a lot of experience, but this company was started in 1996, and in 1997 he was already applying for a patent, and by 1999, he had a flock of transgenic chickens, all within 3 years. From a guy who had nothing published before 1996 in the field, to have a flock of the transgenic chickens by 99 is pretty amazing. Well, it's not that amazing if you take Helen Sang's work and apply it. And that seems to be what happened. But now that the industry had its private company to progress this project, they also needed the public face of failure. They needed a public company that would also be involved in it and be so terribly intentionally inept that eventually they would go out of business, stamping the project as a failure when all along it was being progressed by Avigenics. And we'll talk about that one next time. Bye.